This week on Vaticano, Pope Francis leads a prayer for the unity of Christians in Rome. The Pope also invites the world to see communication as a blessing, and we follow him through a busy week of activities between the Week of Prayer for Christian Unity and a variety of audiences in the Vatican. Also, this American priest tells us about the second annual Vatican-led campaign to get people back to the sacraments through confession. All this, plus the head of the Vatican Department for the Family, speaks about the importance of Catholic families. And we discover why the Vatican Museums are going through Mummy-Mania. All this and more now on Vaticano. The Week of Prayer for the Unity of Christians has a long tradition. It is important because it reminds us of the fact that prayer for unity is not actually limited to a single week. It is basically an examination of conscience to where we stand and how we are doing.
The Week of Prayer for Unity of Christians was marked across the world, and most especially in Rome, from January 18th to the 25th.
We had lots of guests this week. We had an ecumenical pilgrimage from Finland, among them Catholics and Lutherans, who were received by the Holy Father in audience. And on Sunday, the old Oriental churches arrive, since we have a plenary meeting for the theological dialogue of the Oriental and the Catholic Church. Then we have an initiative for groups of religious life. So there are a lot of events that show that the spiritual ecumenism can be further deepened and is in fact deepened.
Spirituelle Ökumenismus sehr vertieft werden kann und vertieft werden muss.
The culminating event takes place every year in the Roman Basilica of St. Paul's outside the walls on the feast of the conversion of St. Paul. The Pope meets with other Christian leaders for a shared prayer. This year, he asked that they put the difficulties of the past aside and seek unity anew.
The
unity of Christians, of this we are convinced, will not be the fruit of refined discussions on theories in which one tries to convince the other with arguments that are more noise than opinion. The Son of Man could return and still find us discussing. We have to recognize that if we want to reach the depth of the mystery of God, we have the need of one another, of an encounter, and of the confrontation under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, who harmonizes the diversity and overcomes conflicts, who reconciles diversities.
Riconcilia le diversità.
This goal is also driving the man leading the Vatican's efforts to promote Christian unity.
In beider Hinsicht hoffe ich, dass wir nicht stehen, sondern dass wir gehen.
I hope that we are not standing still but moving forward, since ecumenism is an advancing with small steps. Concerning the Orthodox, we have to distinguish between the dialogue of love and the dialogue of truth.
Der Pflege der Freundschaften, der Brüderlichkeit und dem Dialog der Wahrheit.
At times, it's a dialogue that doesn't need words. In Istanbul last November, Catholic and Orthodox relations took another small step forward with a kiss.
The Holy Father Francis wanted that the Patriarch blessed him. He said, "Bless me and the Church of Rome." And I think that's for the Patriarch very stooped about this and kissed the head of his blessing. I think that's a very good idea. We have need the blessing one another in the ecumenical dialogue, and I think that's a very beautiful sign for deepen the friendship and the brotherhood between the Orthodox and the Catholic Church.
Pope Francis is encouraging families to maintain their place as the first school of communication. In his message for this year's World Communications Day, he speaks of the family as a privileged place of encounter with the gift of love.
In a world where people often curse, use foul language, speak badly of others, sow discord, and poison our human environment by gossip. The family can teach us to understand communication as a blessing. In situations apparently dominated by hatred and violence, where families are separated by stone walls, or the no less impenetrable walls of prejudice and resentment, where there seem to be good reasons for saying enough is enough, it is only by blessing rather than cursing, by visiting rather than repelling, and by accepting rather than fighting, that we can break the spiral of evil and show that goodness is always possible, and educate our children to fellowship.
Did you realize the message of this year is quite original? The Holy Father doesn't talk too much about technologies of communication. He's not touching the problem of the digital world or the digital continent. Yes, it is touching this point, but it's not for me the main aspect of his message. The Holy Father is deepening what he was saying already last year. If you remember, the message of last year was about the culture of the encountering. And he's applying this message, such a reflection, to the family.
The family is a place where generations meet, where the masculine meets the feminine, and different opinions converge. It is the first place of dialogue and concession-making.
The Holy Father is discovering that the first way of communication, for me, the source of my learning, is the womb of my mother. Can you imagine what it means? That inside the womb of my mother, I am starting to listen. Communication is more a human dimension than a technological dimension. You know, you can understand, you know very perfectly, for example, I don't know how many SMS you are sending every day. We send hundreds every day, but many of them has no aspect. It's just a technical connection, but I am not putting my heart in that message. So the great risk is this, that I am an expert in technology, but I am not an expert in humanity.
The new forms of communication offer vast opportunities, but can also pose a threat if not handled with care. For example, in the easy access to pornography.
I think that there are two levels to this problem. One is to give them restrictions to be close to them and to know what they do on the web. There is also a deeper level, which the Pope touches on with this message, and that is to educate children with an authentic meaning of social communication, being close to one another, to welcome them with the heart and to be together, giving the children the opportunity to be together. The Internet gives them a possibility to navigate the world, but the instructions that come with it are wrong. The right directions can only be given by the family.
The first World Communications Day was announced by Blessed Pope Paul VI in 1967.
It was a busy week for Pope Francis. While the week for prayer for unity of Christians was going on, he received a delegation of Finnish Christians in audience, led by Lutheran Archbishop Kari McKinnon. The group was making its annual pilgrimage to Rome for the feast day of St. Henry, patron saint of Finland. The audience had a goal of approaching a full, visible union with the Catholic Church. Pope Francis focused his Sunday Angelus meditation on Jesus' first preaching in public and connected it with the unity of all Christians.
Con la sua incarnazione, Dio ha posto la sua sete.
With his incarnation, God has placed his thirst, because God also thirsts, in the heart of mankind, in Jesus of Nazareth. Therefore, in the heart of Christ, human and divine thirst meet. And the desire for the unity of his disciples belongs to this thirst. We find it expressed in the prayers raised to the Father before the Passion, so that they all may be one. This is what Jesus wanted, the unity of all. The devil, as we know, is the father of division. He is the one who always divides, who always makes war, and does so much evil.
Che sempre fa guerre, fa tanto male.
Afterwards, the Pope called for solidarity with those who suffer from leprosy on the World Leprosy Day, and balloons were released in the square to mark World Peace Sunday. The Pontifical Institute for Arabic and Islamic Studies is marking its 50-year anniversary. Pope Francis received them an audience, asking them to dedicate their studies to fostering mutual understanding among Catholics and Muslims.
In the last year, despite some misunderstandings and difficulties, steps forward were made in the interreligious dialogue, and also with some of the faithful of Islam. That's why the exercise of listening is essential. It is not just a necessary condition in the process of reciprocal understanding and peaceful living together, but also a pedagogical must, with the goal of becoming capable of recognizing the dignity of the other, to understand their preoccupations and answer their questions in order to make living side by side possible.
The
participants in an international congress on Dignitatis Connubii at the Pontifical Gregorian University were also received by Pope Francis in audience as their meetings came to a close. The document, Dignitatis Connubii, serves as instruction for the Church's diocesan tribunals in cases of annulments. The Pope invited them to further explore ways of speeding up the process for reaching decisions on annulments. Pope Francis sent a letter to the new cardinals to be created on February the 14th. In the letter, he recalled that their primary objective is to serve the Church and Christ. In this second consistory of Francis' papacy, he will create 20 new cardinals, 15 of whom are of voting age in an eventual conclave. Thanks for watching. This is Vaticano.
The Vatican is making an effort to bring Catholics back to the sacraments by first getting them into the confessional.
We came up with this initiative called the 24 Hours for the Lord. And we proposed it to the Holy Father a year and a half ago, and the Holy Father said this would be something wonderful. We'll run it here in the Diocese of Rome, and we'll propose it to churches around the world.
Like last year, during the 24-hour event, the faithful are invited back into the church to reconcile themselves and prepare themselves for Easter.
It really is a very simple initiative. So what we do is we invite bishops and pastors to keep their churches open for a period of 24 hours on the fourth Friday into the fourth Saturday of Lent, and to just invite people to come home to the sacrament of God's mercy. And then they could have the people come, they'd have confessors there, they'd have maybe Eucharistic adoration, music, and also there's a pastoral aid that we prepared so that when people come in, there's something they can read and reflect on.
Simultaneously with the Diocese of Rome, parish priests across the world are being asked to join the campaign. Pope Francis kicked it off last year by going to confession himself. It's a concrete way to teach people to trust in this central sacrament of the Church.
How do I do it? How do I go to confession? I haven't been so long. And so this is a way to help people in the journey back.
Pope Francis's words on the return flight from Manila on responsible parenthood created a lot of buzz in the media. During this encounter for families in preparation for the Synod in October, the head of the Vatican's Council for the Family explained the true meaning of the Pope's words.
Le parole del Papa vanno prese sempre nel loro contesto, mai isolate.
The words of the Pope need to be taken always in context and can never be taken out of context. That is true for all of them. I can say that last December 28th, We had a splendid audience with the Pope with numerous families. The Pope was extraordinarily happy, and that is the true context in which also the words of the Pope have to be understood. They were geared towards responsible parenthood. That means, speaking again about the encyclical of Paul VI that was truly prophetic, it is essential that the children are also wanted and will be received with love. That means that the coming together of mother and father has to happen in a context in which the number of children is also considered.
Circa il numero dei figli.
This conference in Rome gave families and clerics the opportunity to prepare for the upcoming Synod on the Family this October. Numerous children are not just a gift, but a necessity for a healthy society.
In questo senso, quando ad esempio
In this context, when he spoke about the 3 children, he answered the question and explained that this is the number experts propose as the minimum number that safeguards the continuation of a society. The Pope did not say that this is the ideal. I'm asking myself, do we Europeans realize that having 1 child means to cut the future in half? In this sense, we need to be responsible for ourselves and for the future.
dobbiamo essere responsabili per noi e per il futuro.
Raul Sanchez, General Secretary for the European Confederation of Large Families, noted that the Pope's statements cannot be taken negatively.
It's not about imposing models on anyone. It's about facilitating everyone who wants to have children so that they can have them. People ask us sometimes, do you guys want everybody to be a numerous family? And we say no. What we want for everyone is to decide freely the number of children they want to have. But those who want more children must not be discriminated against. They don't need to be penalized. And society must see children as a positive value that contributes to the progress of society and the maintenance of our welfare, which is the opposite of what happens today.
Nuestro sistema de bienestar, esto es todo lo contrario de lo que sucede hoy en día.
In this week's audience, held in the Paul VI Hall, Pope Francis focused his third meditation on the family, on the figure of the father.
En nuestros días se ha llegado a
In our days,
de una sociedad
we have come to
sin
speak
padres.
of a society without fathers.
Ausencia de la figura paterna
For
es
some,
entendida como una
the absence
liberación,
of the father figure is understood as a liberation, especially when the father is perceived as a cruel authority who limits the freedom of his children, or when the children feel neglected by fathers who focus only on their problems, on their work, or on their own personal realization, or are characterized by their marked absence from home. All of this creates a situation in which the children and youth of today are so often like orphans, who live disoriented lives without the good example or prudent guidance of a father. All Christian communities and the civil community should be aware of the absence of the father figure, for it leaves gaps and wounds in the education of the youth. Without trustworthy guides, youth can easily be led by false idols who end up stealing their hearts, their enthusiasm, and their genuine wealth.
During the audience, circus artists performed for the Pope, who attentively watched the spectacle.
This was the annual interreligious prayer service organized by the Permanent Mission of the Holy See in Geneva, based on the theme For the World Day of Peace, given by the Holy Father.
When we think of the world, the thing which is happening and do to the world, we do have to have kind of interreligious relationship to make a calm and quiet, harmonious society. That is what the main thing that we have to do. We have to do more and more interreligious dialogue like what we did today.
Leaders from different local religious communities gave their interpretation and meditation upon the theme, no longer slaves, but brothers and sisters.
Well, I think we see from the news that we hear and see every day that many conflicts that are happening, much violence that is happening, much of that tends to be categorized by being religious in nature, whereas in reality those are aberrations of religion.
Well, listen, in the past, 1 century ago, there were places with Catholics only, Protestants only, Muslims or Jews only. But today, we have a multi-religious population. People want to know each other and want to live together. And therefore, those in charge of religious communities have to come together with others and find solutions to coexist. A gathering that demonstrated the much-needed unity, diverse in its approach and enriching for everyone who participated this evening.
Welcome back. This is Vaticano. Mummies. At the Vatican Museums, they're busy solving mysteries from ancient Egypt, shedding light on the history of 60 animal mummies and 7 human mummies in their collection. They also have 2 specimens they thought were children, but studies have shown they are false and were made artificially in the 19th century.
Una mummia per gli egiziani ha un valore simbolico importantissimo.
A mummy for Egyptians is an important value, represents the possibility of entering a dimension from another world or divine world. The restoration of these small mummies has started within the project and with surprising results. Instead of being a mummy of Egyptian times, we found that was done in the 19th century, probably in an English-speaking environment for a market of antiques. During the 19th century, it was a highly sought souvenir for private collectors. That's the reason these false mummies were created. They are highly similar to the originals that became collectibles in museums in Europe.
Soltanto di privati, ma anche di musei che si andavano formando in Europa proprio nel XIX secolo.
A team of 10 specialists spent almost 2 months using modern research techniques to verify their authenticity.
All these researches and new data are born out of curiosity with other museums and experts to exchange data and to develop a comprehensive study in which to file the information so other institutions and museums can perform the same studies and verify the authenticity of their mummies.
The restoration of the mummy lasted about a year. This research has explored and advanced new techniques for this type of restoration.
After
gathering all studies, X-rays, chemical analysis, 1 microscope analysis, and high-resolution images, we realized we were in front of a manufactured object, built with the parts from original Egyptian objects and aftermarket parts, as the architecture of these bones belonged to medieval young adults, and the embalming techniques are not ancient.
The mummies, along with the research results, will be displayed in the museum soon. On the feast day of St. Agnes, the Pope traditionally blesses lambs, whose wool will be used to create the pallia, a woolen stole, which will be bestowed upon metropolitan archbishops and patriarchs as a sign of their jurisdiction. The lambs were presented to Pope Francis in the atrium of his Casa Santa Marta residence by the Sisters of the Convent of St. Agnes. The Benedictine nuns of Santa Cecilia in Trastevere later weaved the lamb's wool into pallia. The pallium, once woven, will be stored in an urn above the tomb of St. Peter. These stoles represent the plenitude of the pontifical office of the metropolitan archbishops and will be given to them on the feast of St. Peter and St. Paul on June the 29th.